Good morning, everybody. John Spiekler here for GenAI News, rating your top news, essential, important, or optional, putting thoughts in your head and time in your day. We have Paul, Adam, Tim, and Ankash today. Interesting set of articles coming up here. Ankash, start us off with the first one.
Sure, John. So the first one that we have for today comes from our own Paul and John. So they have written a very amazing article on turbocharging organization learning with GenAI.
All right. Well, Paul and I know this one well.
How did this end up in here? The fix is in, John.
There we go. Hey, all right, Adam, what do you think here?
This is an essential read. Tim and I were talking about this just before the call, and first of all, we always want to showcase great examples of writing, and you've both done a phenomenal job of this article of making really clear points, having good ways that it's even laid out, just in terms of the format and the way you get through the information. It's deep enough. It has good use cases. It makes clear points. It's excellent writing. But as I was also saying to John just before the call, I feel like over time, you've been able to synthesize your thoughts. You have more clarity with where we are now in terms of the GenAI landscape and the lessons we're learning, talking to organizations, and you've done an outstanding job of conveying those ideas with more clarity than in even the previous articles. So this is really, I applaud you. I'm proud to be part of a team with you, and this is absolutely an essential read in my opinion.
Thanks, Adam. I appreciate that. Paul and I have been working hard on it. What do you think, Tim?
I thought it was great. Yeah, and I think there are a couple of points. I would certainly be fine with essential. It's a fairly brief article, so and I think it's good for people to read. Particularly, there's a couple of great concepts in it. John, I'll go back to our favorite hero, Alan Kay, who had a great way of putting things. He said, look, great tools are fantastic, but really what counts is fluency and the ability of an organization, in this case, ability of an organization. He was talking about music and the ability of people to play musical instruments. So they're great musical instruments, but if you put a piano in the middle of people who've never seen a piano, you won't get Mozart. You'll more likely get chopsticks. And his quote was, the music's not in the piano. And I think that's a great point of this article is the tools are there, but if you don't develop organizational fluency, organizational capability, you're going to get chopstick, not Mozart. If you want Mozart, you're going to have to work at this pretty hard. So to me, that was a great message, and it's a well-written article, so 2 thumbs up.
All righty. Well, thank you. As you say, exactly the point. I think that's the thing that Paul and I are passionate about is that, look, this is really about an organizational capability, and I know that's almost tautological, right? It's never just about the technology, but in this, I think there's such a dialogue between people and machines, and anyway, Paul, anything to add before?
No, I think it's just telling, though, that, I don't want to use the name of the company, but the last 3 companies, John, you and I have been with CIO, Chief Technology Officer, the sole discussion has been on the tool, on the piano, and not capability. So I do think it's important. Obviously, it's an important message we believe in.
Just one last thing to add, and it's at the very bottom of the article, but what I find a lot of articles leave short is giving people a way forward and having them have some clarity around what they can do. And you do a great job at the end talking about the dialogue-enabled process and what we're going to see, moving into the future here. The dialogue-enabled process and products, citizen programmers with agentic networks, and a capability to handle unstructured data like we've never seen before. So it just gives a really clear way forward.
Great, man. Thank you. All right. Feel good about that one. Akash, next, please.
Okay, the next one comes from Mistral. So Mistral has launched CodeStrill 25.01.
All right, we have CodeStrill and the fantastic, what's the word I'm looking for, pageantry of code helpers here. What do you think, Tim?
I think this is interesting, but I would give it an optional for the AI leader. We had a great learning lab last night where a former coder, or someone like me, maybe a little less like me, I still code some, but we don't code every day for a living, and yet you can use these tools to really make a lot of progress. And he was using Cursor, and there's a couple of others like that are really sophisticated tools, way beyond what Mistral's doing. Mistral could be an underlying foundation of it, this kind of thing here. But I think it's going to move more in that direction. So for the AI leader, I think this is optional. It's a little bit of catch up. They look like they're now right at state-of-the-art level, but it's open source, kind of roll your own thing. So, and there's a number of these out there. So I rated it optional.
All right, optional. Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, agreed. Tim's spot on.
I do think the one notable thing is that optional is important for companies who do want to have this inside their trust boundaries. So for people who are concerned about having coding assistance for coders going to a shared service, this is
Agreed.
One up.
Agreed. But again, I would these days point most people to something like Cursor, where you can pick a model. And I don't know if it supports this one, but you can pick several models from that one. And so you can pick, I believe, an open source model and run it internally if you want.
Yeah. All righty. So we're going for optional. All right. Next.
Okay, the next one that we have is a research paper which talks about video RAG, so retrieval augmented generation over a video corpus.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting one here with video RAG. Right, we have this ability to leverage not only the large language models but the video large language models that have really come out. So let's see who do we have on this. We have Paul. What do you think, video RAG?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it's interesting concept. It's this paper is just a framework, so I had as optional, but this notion that you're going to be taking subsets of data that you care about to improve accuracy is, I think, an important one, but still early days for AI leaders for video. So optional, my view.
Optional on that one. All right. It's interesting. I was listening to Jeffrey Hinton talk about, are we running out of data or not? And he's pointing, as many are, toward video. And I think there's lots to be learned about everything from what the video is about and storytelling through the physics of reality. As people start doing this stuff. But interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize this is just a framework. I thought they had working code, but you can't get it. So, I guess. Anybody know?
They have some working code, yeah, but it's open source, and I don't know if they even distributed it. I didn't go all the way to the bottom of the references and stuff. They certainly didn't have an obvious pointer to here's our code.
Gotcha.
They did use Lava, I think, in another model. Adam, did you read it carefully? So they built something and they did some benchmarking. The benchmarking, look, this is an obvious area where there's going to be progress, because right now we're totally focused on text, but the reality is we're a visual species. So at the end of the day, TV always wins, as Marshall McLuhan said a long time ago. So this will be important in some sense, but this is research and a little bit early, I think.
Adam, where are you on this?
Optional as well. It's interesting research. This could end up becoming very important, especially in certain industries, but it's still very much on the research.
I'll be right back. Take over, Paul.
So I'm fine with optional. Thanks, Paul.
Great. Optional is next article on Kash, please.
Okay, the next one comes from Strategy, and it talks about AI's uneven arrival.
Tim, what are your thoughts on this one?
This is, sometimes he writes really good articles, the Strategy guy. Sometimes he just writes long articles. This, to me, fit a little bit more into the latter category. It's a long article to make a short point, which is an okay point, which, everybody loves the quote. Was it Neil Stephenson or William Gibson who said, the future is already here, but it's not evenly distributed. And that's always true when there are emerging technologies. And he goes to great lengths to talk about how advertising was impacted by digital advertising, and to try and bring that analogy over. I'm not sure it really works the way he's done it. But there's one good point, which is absolutely there's new stuff happening all the time. You need to be aware of it if you want to take advantage of it. Smaller companies tend to do better than larger companies. Long before even Clayton Christensen wrote The Innovator's Dilemma, there were a lot of us talking about that it's usually the smaller companies that really bring the new technologies to light because they don't carry around the baggage of the larger companies and their culture and their ties to older technology suites. So, okay, but I would probably rate this optional, to tell you the truth.
Feels like optional. Adam, optional?
Yeah, agreed. First of all, I don't know who Box is. And it starts by talking about Box's route to its IPO 10 years ago, and then what else they've done, and all these quotes from them. And
Box is a corporate version of Dropbox.
Dropbox, yeah.
Same idea.
I probably could have looked it up, but I just was lost immediately and felt like I read too far before I really got to something that was making the point that was the title of the article in the first place. And very, very optional read for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just was a long article for a short point.
Great. Optional is. Next one is a statement from the intergalactic NVIDIA about Biden. Kick us off, Pankaj.
So this one particularly on the new sort of regulation that the Biden administration is coming up with. So NVIDIA seems to be siding with Trump administration for that.
Yeah, this was a sign to me. I had this as certainly important. This goes to, I don't know if people saw, I can't remember if we covered it, the Andreessen interview with Joe Rogan a couple months ago, where Andreessen talked about how he was absolutely stunned how aggressive the Biden administration was going to be on AI regulation, and that got him to support Trump for the election here. This is apparently executive order. It's going in effect 120 days. I assume Biden may switch it, but I had it as important. Others, John or Adam?
I'll jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pretty passionately here. I think this is essential. It's not only essential people understand what's going on, but that they understand that this is not a political issue. This is basically a fundamental right that we have to publication and to information. And this is the equivalent of banning books and saying that they get to decide who gets to go to the libraries. Right. This is sweeping regulation on the design, marketing, and sale of semiconductors, computing systems, and AI software globally. This executive order by the Biden administration, I 100% agree that NVIDIA is right to come out publicly and criticize them for it, and a lot of other people are as well. And I encourage others to do the same.
I have to say, I will respectfully disagree that this is not political. In fact, the worst thing about this article is it's a complete pander to the Trump administration, and they're talking their own book. Look, they want zero regulation. So it's a little bit, we can argue about the regulation itself, but nobody has read the regulation. Okay, I won't say nobody, but let's say the vast majority of people have no idea what's in that 200 pages or what the impact would actually be. And a lot of these people were the same people who said, hey, we have to stop development of AI for 6 months and put all sorts of handcuffs on people. And so to me, it's a much more complex situation. And there's, we've talked about sovereign AI a lot. It's just more complicated. I will say that I have not read the 200 pages of regulation. So I can't comment on whether this is good regulation or bad regulation, but I can comment that this article is a Trump lapdog article, and that makes me immediately question the motives and worry about what's going on here. So I would
thank you, Tim. What I should have said is it's not just
some reasonable source that actually has something interesting to say about the regulations themselves and what the actual impact would be. You may be right, Adam. I don't know. I can't argue about the regulation itself, but this article doesn't forward the conversation at all.
What I should have said, you're absolutely right, is that it's not just political, right? To the point, there's something underneath.
Regulatory issues are big, But I just think it's more complicated, and I'd love to see a better article explaining what the impacts of the regulation might actually be before we torch it and claim that the Trump administration solved all problems the last time around, which was the other thing that really got my attention.
Yeah, I'd rate it essential because this is a conversation that's going to play out over the next 180 days, and I think it's going to materially affect the industry. And I agree with some of the the dear leader stuff that we're going into, but the notion of how is this being regulated? What's the Trump administration going to do? Are any of these executive orders that are that put in place by the Biden administration going to continue? And even what is in this thing? Because I don't know either. I'm looking at the fact sheet from the White House. It sounds very different from the way NVIDIA's portraying this. So I do think it's something this is just the very beginning, but I think it's something our AI leader needs to pay attention to.
Well, again, I'll disagree. I think A, if you're going to read about it, why read this article? B, if you're going to, if Trump's, 6 days away from inauguration, if on the 12th day of inauguration, he just rewrites the executive order and nixes this out, nobody's going to remember this 3 months from now, which seems to me, at least, I don't know, because I don't know what's going on here that well. But that seems a pretty good probability to me that this thing will just be nixed and won't even ever really have much of an impact.
He's certainly stated he's going to undo everything. I mean, he said that. So
you make a good point, Tim. It might be that this article is important. The regulation and the news is essential, and a better article might have been an essential one. But there are specifics, just so you know, in this bill around restricting export based on the number of teraflops that chips can process and compute, or how much TPU or interconnect bandwidth they have. Then they're subject to export restrictions, and it just feels like a massive overreach to me.
Okay.
Well, I think what's interesting is it kind of reminds me of when in Medicare, Medicaid, they actually have language in the law that talks about what they will fund in terms of dealing with kidney disease up to a particular hematocrit level. And it's just, I don't think they should be doing science in the executive order. I think they should be doing, coordination, and because, legislating at a hematocrit level is not a good way to regulate, I don't think. And so anyway.
100% agree. Having implemented many of those CMS recommendations in a former career, that it always drove me nuts. But that's Congress, and Congress legislates literally down to that level of detail, and it's just insane. So yes, I agree.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So we're going to give this important then. So not essential because it's not the article we want. Important is something to pay attention to. All right. Let's go there. Next, Stankaj. And sorry to duck out here. One of my pugs was choking and my wife needs some help. But she is fine. Rosie is alive and well.
Great. So the last one that we have for today comes from Langsmith, and it talks about Axiom's use of Langsmith for enhanced audience segmentation.
Yeah, I think this is so fascinating because I was talking to a very, very experienced direct marketing executive who's made a fortune building and selling direct marketing companies. And I said to him, what do you think of the idea that basically, in traditional direct marketing, we have a statistical model of the customer, and in the new world, we have a semantic model? And he thought that was a good way to look at it. And I think this is about opening up that semantic access. Anyway, let's see, who do we have on this one? We have Adam. What'd you think?
I was on the fence between optional and important. It is some really interesting stuff. And so it's about what are some of the challenges and the complexities as you start scaling up the maturity of these segmentation models, right? So it's something just like using an LLM for audience segmentation is fine. But when you start thinking about how you're going to have to modify prompts based on data lookups, iterative refinement, interpretation of the different segmentations. The LangChain here in this use case is demonstrating robust observability and multi-agent workflows. So it's the ability to sort of get a supervisor position that can help you orchestrate and manage all of the diversity across this segmentation and all of the unique variance and diversity within your prompts and your agents and the way you're going to get and then use information to target specific audiences. So it is a complex subject. For that reason, I had it as potentially important for people to start getting ahead of, because the complexities with agentic systems is going to be presented for many this year, I think, as they start realizing these challenges. It's not so straightforward, but I could also see how it's optional because it's a specific use case within LangChain, and a pretty niche one at that.
Yeah, I would go for optional because it's again, I'm usually all over these use cases, as I like to say, back pocket use cases, but this one is just light. It's nice on the domain stuff, as you were saying, Adam, but really light on the how do we really make this work. So again, I would advise these people, go read those Amazon use cases and put a little of that in here. You don't have to maybe go to that level of depth, but something about how this stuff works. Now, we understand it. This is an LLM ops kind of platform, which is an important thing, but without situating that in context and saying, hey, you're going to need these LLM ops no matter what the domain you're in. The use case itself is interesting, but to me is not as well developed as many, and also is specific to LangChain environments pretty much. I mean, I'm sure you can figure out how to use it in a non-LangChain environment, but it's pretty specific product advertisement here. And for most people, they aren't interested in ops right now. They're much more interested in development and prototyping and things like that. I think ops are important, but I wouldn't be shoving it down people's throats that much without better and clearer explanation.
All right, Paul, where are we? O or I?
Optional.
Optional. All right. The O's have it. We're going to go optional on this one. Sorry about that, Adam. All right. And if you give us a token.
I was on the fence. That's totally fine.
All right. We pulled it back over to the O side. All right. Any announcements or so forth?
Only announcement, well, two announcements. One, Tim mentioned earlier, we had just a fascinating learning lab last night from Dan Slavin, who actually went through coding differences with OpenAI and Cursor and others. So we'll get that posted this week.
It's terrific. And Adam's thing, even though he had a little glitch, was also terrific.
Exactly, with the replit. And other announcement is we continue to get really good feedback for our free download of comparison grid of secure employee chatbots. That's available on our website, GAIinsights.com.
Yes. And also, Paul and I are headed over to Davos next week, and really going to be looking at a number of things, but especially what's going on in the AI world. And we're going to have this fantastic event with Imagination in Action. We're going to have real world leaders in this, folks like Jan LeCun, Eric Brynjolfsson, Dave Rubenstein from, the senior CEO of Carlyle. So if folks have questions or things that they would like us to be watching for, looking for, whatever, please, email either of us or come to this tomorrow and just put some of those comments in the commentary here. We'll see what we can't do to be reporters for you and your curiosity, for those of you who are not going. All right. That's it for today. Look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now.